Welcome to this video. My name is Christian from Being Premiere, and Silo Season 2 is here. After that jaw-dropping Season 1 finale where Julia discovered the reality about the multiple silos and that destroyed landscape, we're right back into the dystopian mystery with some huge revelations. I mean, think about it. The implications of this are massive, and Episode 1 deals with this fallout. Remember how Season 1 was all about uncovering the lies within a single silo? Well, now we're expanding our view to something much bigger. Welcome, and let's begin.
You do that again, and I'm gonna kill you.
Okay, so let's talk about this episode titled The Engineer. Now this connects back to Juliet's core identity. Props to the writers because this is not just about her profession, it's about who she is at her core. Someone who figured out how system works, and now she's faced with the biggest broken system of all. But yes, I'm excited to see how this episode is gonna set up the rest of Season 2. Now, the huge aspect of this episode is that mind-blowing encounter with Solo, and that's the name going from IMDb. And remember those bells from the very beginning? That scene with Russell and those specific 3 bells. It was not just a random setup. Now we're seeing how it all connects to this mysterious figure in this chamber. And speaking of connections, let's break down how this perfectly ties to the themes about isolation. I mean, think about Julie's journey through recycling. That scene with Marta telling her about being completely alone.
I went out in the corridor, I yelled, "Is anybody out there?"
It's like the show was foreshadowing this exact moment with Solo, who's been surviving in this hidden chamber, completely cut off from everyone. I mean, this is a possibility. This connects to why Solo presence is so huge for this season. Remember how Juliet always questioned what was behind closed doors, how she never just accepted things at face value. Well, now she's found someone who might have been behind one of those doors this whole time, well, in the silo, which brings up so many questions about who else might be hidden in all of those other silos. Remember how Season 1 showed us that even the walls had hidden cameras in the mirrors. Now we're learning that there's another silo that did the opposite. But what makes this really interesting is Solo's warnings about trying to open that door again is a hint that there are some doors that even Juliet, our resident rule breaker, might need to think twice about opening. Because what we see at the beginning of the episode, she's literally opening a door to enter this other silo and finding creative ways to do so. I mean, just think about how this connects to everything we have learned so far. The bells, the hidden chambers, the codes, it's all part of the bigger system that we're just starting to understand in the silo, the propaganda against the silo, and this is going to have major implications for future episodes, similar to how finding George's hard drive led to discovering the reality about the outside world. And we need to talk about that intense scene with Julia trying to cross over to the other side. I mean, talk about a perfect metaphor for this entire episode. He crossed over from one silo to the next, and now from the staircase, and creating a bridge, literally. Now remembering how in Season 1, Juliet was always trying to bridge gaps between her and her father, between what people believe and what was real, between the answers about the outside and the lies they were told. We see her in the journey into this new silo. Now this connects to Shirley's story about being left in the dark with that massive machine, and it's perfectly what Juliet is facing now, going slowly into that new silo, but also how she's in the dark. Remember how Shirley said, "I went really slowly, but I found my way." It's like the show is telling us something about survival. Sometimes you have to feel your way through the darkness, even if there's no clear path forward. And speaking of path forward, let's talk about that moment when she realized that there's no bridge. And I mean, props to Rebecca, she has to find a way to convey that emotion across her face and how she has to find another way. This connects back to how she handled problems in mechanical when the obvious solution is not there. You have to get creative, which is something that she did. But here's what makes this scene really powerful. I mean, the whole theme about the silo's design is not just about keeping people in, but it's also about controlling how they move between spaces. I mean, in Season 1, we see how Bernard controlled everything through those hidden cameras and surveillance. Now we're seeing another layer of control between sections of this massive structure. I mean, it is destroyed, but I mean, the whole episode is about this physical and metaphorical bridges that don't exist. It's similar to how Knox and Juliet had to figure out ways around problems in mechanical when the usual solutions would not work. The lack of a bridge is not just an obstacle, it's another piece of the puzzle about how the silos are designed to control movement and communication. And hey, look what happened. Now in this new silo, Juliet discovers solo, which means alone. And he reveals his connection to the song because, as we can see, it's a massive revelation about who he is and what he knows. In our original silo, we see how they're relics, and here they're like in the open, so they're not preserved, something physical. I mean, think about how this connects to Solo's whole situation. He's in this hidden chamber, isolated from everyone else. This tiny detail tells us that maybe he went in after he heard about Juliet, or B, he was always there. Now, what I love about this episode is how it's connecting the past to the future and the history of other silos. Because if you think about it, the whole episode is about what happened if that rebellion came true. Something that we're gonna see in our own silo, going from the promos. And that's what the reason why Shirley past and future are gonna be so important, because it's not just her story of survival in the darkness, it's about how she becomes part of the resistance. I mean, think about that opening scene with the kid running with the torch. Well, that's not just cool cinematography, it's literally showing us how rebellion spreads through the silo like wildfire. Now, this is connecting a lot to Shirley's character development. We've seen her go from being that scared kid left alone in the darkness to someone featured with fire in the promo material. So I'm excited to see this because she's gonna be the one that is gonna embrace that rebellion. And if it happens, we see how many thousands of people die. Because in those flashback scenes, we're seeing two things. How Juliet went into mechanical and started working with them, and the relationship with Martha and Shirley, and how those things play out in the future, like the darkness as well as being alone. That's a whole theme of this episode, and how one can work through that. Now, that's a whole episode, because what we're seeing is just Juliet going into this new silo, going through those moments of discovering and finding answers, and we see a lot of lies about how it all is fake, and makes me think that that's exactly what we're gonna see in our own silo, because as we know, Juliet didn't clean, so that's gonna be an entire system that is gonna be broken by the lies. This is gonna push everyone to actually escape, which as we know is a big bad, because many died. I imagine that they thought it was a real thing, that maybe outside was gonna be happy and joyful, but we see how the flag in the beginning. Now I'm really looking forward to episode 2, because we're gonna see what happened after Juliet went outside and denied to clean. Now, something else that we need to talk about this episode, and that is the song, that brilliant scene with Juliet and the Moon River music, because it completely reframes a lot about what we knew about the cultural memory in the silos and how each of them have different rules. So the song choice, first time we ever heard pre-silo music in the show, and Moon River is not just some random song, it's about dreaming of crossing boundaries like we see with Juliet. Now notice how the song is playing after she crosses from the stairs into this new area. I find it really intriguing. Now, another character that we have in this episode, and that is Gladys, who she explains the rules and how she keeps track of what is closed and so on. Even the comment about drinking water. So it's not just about health. She's basically a gatekeeper of information in recycling. Now, what I love about this is that we have this whole underground information and how it just works. Like, for example, the timing system, new load every 5 minutes, and how everyone has to stick to this precise schedule. So those are some things about the episode which are so great. But that's the video for today. My name is Christian from Being Premiere, and I will see you in the next one. Bye bye, everyone.